Welcome, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be with you. So, we're going to start a beautiful program with a message that was inspired just for this event for us to meditate on. It's called Invitation to Heal. Time to heal and to grow. Jesus is with us. Paul, Stephen, and Abigail were Christ's dream team. Apostle to the Gentiles, with work and love, sacrifice and perseverance. He gave us the light of the Christ. He is forever with us. Effort, humility, and love. Guidance and inspiration to service. Paul, your remarkable life is our roadmap to a more fulfilling life. Christ showed us the path. Paul and Stephen followed it with Abigail as the pillar of support. Christ could count on them to bring us the good news. Teamwork and collaboration. Feeling Christ's love, applying it to service, knowing that healing is possible with Christ Jesus. Sacrifice, love, and devotion. Faith and trust are the key for us to learn to feel that Christ's love is real. So let us take a moment to close our eyes. Feel ourselves present in this room, taking the opportunity that we have for these therapeutic moments. Dear Mother, Father God, thank you so much for this opportunity. We are so blessed to be in your presence, guided and inspired by the mentors of this house, receiving all of us with their love and their devotion. We pray today not only for ourselves and for our own inner journey of healing, but also for all of those who are with us in both realms of life. We pray for those who suffer all around the world. May they know as much as we do that your love is with us each and every day. We pray that we can open our minds, and especially our hearts, to feel the connection we have with you. May these moments of therapeutic healing allow us to grow, to be closer to you. And with your permission and your protection, we begin our service today. And so be it. Thank you so much, Jose. We have this beautiful talent we can enjoy. Oh, I don't blow up your image. We also have our friends on the internet with us. Thank you guys so much for bringing us together today. The special moments where we have the teachings of this book, Paul and Stephen. The importance of being together and having these teachings with us today. These times where we are going to celebrate this week, Thanksgiving. I'm thankful for you because you've been with us for so long. Those who came from far, or those special guests, and those who are near. Nothing comes in this world without a team. So I am thankful for you and the teachings of Spiritism, because without it, it would be much harder. Let me share. Sharing is caring. It will work this time. So here we have the book of Paul and Stephen, as you can see, and as Vanessa will show you as well. Pretty big book. It could be used as our touchstone for many of the works that we do on the earth, in our homes, in the Spiritist centers, and everywhere in our places. So this book was written in 1941, and today we have it in English. What a precious teachings that we can have. And we always start by understanding from the spirits why they write the books. So what we have here is the preface of the book. Emmanuel writes to us that the objective of the book, more than just describe to us the historical events and the maps and all the things that Paul did, because that we can Google, we can look it up, it'll be easy to do. But to demonstrate the struggle as an example of how much effort we must put into our own endeavor to meet Jesus, because that's the invitation for today, to be called to serve in whichever capacity that you're put in your life, the many facets of our understanding. So we need to put that effort to meet Jesus, which will happen one day. He also says the other purpose of the humble effort is to acknowledge the fact that the apostle could not have achieved his potential in this world by himself. The same way you and I come to this world in a family unit with friends, the whole community. Now, even from all the equipment that we are using, all the roads that took us today, we didn't do it all by ourselves. So it's a true team effort, as we're going to see. The journey to understand ourselves better, as Vanessa is going to present, and then later how we can work as a team to amplify our potentialities and the potentialities of those around us. So the call is of service. So he says here, the fact that the unforgettable weaver and tent maker, that's Paul, did indeed have his own divine ministry. But who in this world does not have a ministry from God? That's your call. You're called, he says, in reality, all ordinary men and women have been personally called to serve the Christ. So your call today is to find out, how can I use the teachings that they brought to us so that when we remember the call, because Jesus already called us, so we need to open our hearts and our minds to put into practice what we know so we can fulfill the calling of the Christ. So we have two parts. We'll have one part where Dia, Vanessa, and Saloni will present to us in their journey. We'll take a short break for a stretch, and then we'll go for a second part, the Spiritist journey. But before she comes up here, I want to personally thank her for all that she has done, not only for us, on the behind the scenes of helping with companionship, friendship, guidance, but also for the Spiritist movement in the United States. So thank you for making the track. And of course, it's like being in the military, right? Some serve, and we have the spouses, the Spiritist spouses, like Carlos and our dear Virginia, who are also in this endeavor together. Thank you for everything that you've done for all of us. Without further ado, because I know you want to hear her, so let me pass the torch. Let me see just how we show up here.
Sure.
Where are you going to stand? Where are you going to stand?
Oh, I have to stand here, right?
Yeah. Because I can move around a little bit.
Maybe more. Just a little bit.
Do you want to be big or small? Doesn't matter to you.
Maybe bigger. Yeah, that's okay.
Oh, came back to the beginning. Oh, that's okay.
There.
I put a slide.
I
put a slide in between.
Thank you. All right. It's good to be back. But back and seeing the renaissance of the Spiritist Society of Virginia. That's what it is, renaissance. Right? Sorry, Spiritist Society of Richmond in Virginia, of course. But it's so good to see, and because we know the Spiritist movement around the world, we would say we cannot take this for granted. Because we know many people who would give their lives to have a space like this. A coordinator that is so diligent, so disciplined, so dedicated to make this available. During the prayer, Mentor Joseph was saying, make no mistake, Vanessa, we are revisiting the time of the Christ because we were there, but we were not there helping. And that's why it's so hard for us now. Because after 2,000 years, we're still not helping. We're still not joining forces. We're still creating obstacles. And if we discarnate today, it's not going to be beautiful. Because we will regret not joining in. We will regret not doing more, because that's the reason why we reincarnated. We didn't reincarnate to get married, to have children, to go to work, to buy the optimal house. No, we didn't. None of Andre Louis' books, Emmanuel's books, they say that that's the reason why we reincarnate. We reincarnate for the inner journey. And that's part of the inner journey. We need to sacrifice, not for others. Sacrifice our old selves, like Paul of Tarsus did, to renew, to be anew. Because for 2,000 years and more, we've been this old being, very complicated, between drinking and partying, not being faithful and loyal, not sincere, not honest. And we're not happy when we go to sleep. For us, Spiritists around the world, at a time in which Spiritists are still minority. So this book comes very handy, because at the time, the followers of the Christ were minority. So that's why we need to read and reread, because it's very similar. But we are at great advantage, because now we know the direction and we know why. Then they didn't know. As they say in the book, that prophet comes in. It's a prophet. For some, the Messiah, and yet they don't understand. Some decide to follow him, others hesitate. And still others persecute, complicate. There are spirits in both realms who are also marching this journey with us. They are guiding us. We're not alone. Nobody prepares a space like this alone. In the spiritual realm, everything begins there. It's all outlined there. And blessed are those who receive the message and manifest in the physical realm. 105 years ago, in a tiny city in Brazil, then town, still small to date, named Itobi, family members of ours who migrated from Italy to Brazil, who were Catholic, for circumstances related to health, became Spiritists. 2 families, my grandmother's family and Dr. Ivernia Prada's family, together, they decided to create one of the first Spiritist centers in Brazil. One of the families gave the land. The other, with all the children, built the building. If you go there now, it's half a block or more the size of the center. Imagine back then. In a city that the Catholic Church is the primordial meeting place, they were very courageous. And the place is still there. And it gives lives to many lives. And gave lives to many lives, and helped so many people. Today, asking many family members related to this, we know that those who forgot of their assets to give to the community, forgot of their family lives to make priority for the universal family, as Jesus taught at the cross, telling Mary, Mary, Mom, here's the son, son, here's your mom. And we're still like, my family is more important than universal family. Unlike the Christ, because the Christ didn't teach us that. Asking those families, they say, it was the greatest joy for the families to have made those decisions. Once talking to Carlos, we said, what is more important, to buy a bigger $1 million house or to dedicate part of it to create a Spiritist center that will stay for generations? You can buy the house that you want. You die and then it doesn't go anywhere. You invest in the collective and it stays for generations. 105 years later, we all go there and it's still giving life to many families. Today, we're being asked where we are in that scenario, because it's not by chance we're reunited here. If this were the spiritual realm and we were discarnated, very likely we would say, pick me, I want to be part of it. Now we are reincarnated and we're saying, I can't be here. I can't join in because of work, because of family, because... And I remember how many times people calling me when I was still at the Spiritist side of Baltimore, saying, Vanessa, I'm too busy. And I used to say to my friends at SSP, when people say that to me, it's almost an insult. Because it's almost as if I do nothing. I don't work, don't have family, don't have anything. Because everybody does. So who doesn't? Chico Xavier always worked. And he always helped. So how can we claim to be what we are not and forget our commitment? So let's talk about commitment. This book, okay, where is it? Sorry, Shane. Oh, I used this. Okay, no, it's okay. Oh, yeah.
It's not working.
It's okay. Right here, right? Yeah, that's easy.
Where this one's open down.
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right. So today we're going to talk about the inner journey, because this is a psychological treat as well. Abigail is one of the main characters in the book. She is the sister of Josiel, later Stephen, who got engaged to Paul of Tarsus, who knew it. And this book is a masterpiece. There will be a day on earth where these books will be renowned worldwide as masterpieces, because the style of this literature is unprecedented. The other day I was reading a book that is not a Spiritist book, and I said, man, it's so hard to read these books. Because they do not only the style is failing, but they don't bring consolation. They don't bring hope. They don't bring direction. And in the first 3 chapters of this book, we're going to encounter Abigail, who was only 18. Only 18. 18, but she was a good teenager, aligned. Why? Because of the mom. The father was still not very superior, Joshedeb. We'll see the problems he created for the family. But the mother is the key. Teaching these kids about God. we see in the first 3 chapters that thanks to one of the parents, at least, in this case the mother, could be the father, Jezeel and Abigail are prepared to face the challenges of life. They know about God, and when crucial times come, they are ready, thanks to the mother. Here in the center, unlike their time, we have the advantage of extending these spiritual lessons for the kids that will become memorable. I was raised in a Spiritist family, and I owe a great deal of my decisions today to what I learned in Spiritist centers as a kid. I remember the lessons, and I owe it to all the people who were there teaching, to my parents who brought me there. Because then I learned, as Virginia told me one day, I know the difference between my friends who believe in God and the friends who do not believe in God. She gets along well with all, but she knows the difference. And what is the most pleasant and enjoyable, Virginia? The ones who know of God, right? You feel more comfortable. They are nicer. They are friendlier. Not that we're not going to be friends with the rest of the world, but then we create a community for our children and teens now at the SSVA. In the center. This is so precious. So precious. Abigail brings to us part of what she brought from her mom, the feminine in us. We're going to see that she brings to us this beauty of being so embracing. When the father comes home, Joshadab. Jezeel is about 25 years of age. She's 18. Joshadab was not very happy. Of course not. The guards, the Roman guards, were brutal to the Jewish back then. And he comes home. She's the first one to embrace him with kindness. A daughter that loves the father, even if he doesn't make sense of himself. She doesn't judge the father. She's loving, caring, and at this moment, we'll see that the father made a bad decision. He was so upset with the Romans. He put fire in the neighboring lands. The quaestor got to know they are coming to arrest everyone. Is she upset with her father? That's a question that she and her brother Jezeel were talking about in prison. Would I be upset with my father? I would. But Abigail is saying, She has this beautiful dialogue in prison. She's talking to Jezeel and saying to him, Abigail was very impressed by the brother's words and asked the brother, are you grieving? Are you angered by what our father did? She's not, but she's also confirming if the brother is on the same page. Jezeel said, stroking her hair, see, affection. Nowadays, we're so cold. We need affection. You know, science shows to us that we are healthier with hugs and kisses. At home, we need to hug more. We need to kiss more. Of course, respecting people's space, but we need to march towards this embrace. Jesus used to be that. He used to stroke the hair of his disciples, of people around, and he was not harassing anyone. How can you be loving without touch, without expressing affection? No matter, Jesus is not a master of words, of discipline. I remember seeing the Dalai Lama in 2006 in Washington, D.C., at a meeting of the Society for Neuroscience in the Convention Center. I came this close to him. Of course, he had an entourage protecting him. But I saw his smile was contagious and his happy, joyful attitude. These people who follow the instructions from the highest spheres of the earth, they are joyful, they are happy, they are embracing. They are not leaders that are distant and are saying, sit down, stand up, let's do this. No, it's discipline with love, with care, with affection, with kindness, expression of affection. So we see here that Jezeel and Abigail learned from the beginning that they needed to be loving. And he said, we are undergoing an experience that must be suited for our redemption. Otherwise, God would not have sent it to us. We are living in inflation right now. How do we react to financial restrictions? Do you get upset? Do you get nervous, tense? Are we people who are only happy when we have $1 million in the bank account? Because if we are, we're not redeeming ourselves. If this is a scenario that was brought to us, it must be, as Jezeel said, for our redemption. God would not have sent it to us if we didn't need to go through this time and learn to be loving and caring in spite of the financial restrictions. If we're just loving and caring when we are youthful, beautiful, rich, famous, powerful, then we are not. What about the people who are experiencing illness or difficult financial times, any other difficulty in relationship, and they keep smiling, being joyful and happy? They are the ones like Jezeel and Abigail who surrender. Why? Where does it come from? There are many books. I didn't want to overwhelm anyone because we're talking about the book, but this book reports to us about the inner. We have the feminine and the masculine in us. Jungian psychology explains quite well, and it's important to know that whether we are in the body of men or women, we have the feminine and the masculine inside of us. The masculine, logical. The feminine, intuitive. We're talking about making decisions, being determined, and creative. Being of risk-taking, but balancing with nurturing. Being an achiever, and at the same time allowing ourselves to experience. Managing, controlling, but at the same time allowing us to be. Competition in terms of survival is important, but learning to collaborate. As we march towards the new regeneration of the earth, we're talking about 35 years away. Our children will be adults in the world of regeneration. If we raise them in this masculine mindset, competition, control, etc., they're going to fail. The other day, and I'll say this because these are tangible. At Virginia School, they had this room representative election. I told the teacher, I don't agree with this. At 4th grade, they don't need this nonsense because it's not going to end up well. Make no mistake, it didn't. The boy who lost got no votes. He cried to death, right, Virginia? And I wrote to the teacher, said, why is the school creating this environment for this boy? He needs to learn to lose. Does he need to learn in this way? Creating a scar that is going to haunt him for the rest of his life? Learning that his campaign manager, a colleague, didn't even vote for him? How devastating can it be? How can a teacher of the future accept this? So somebody, my daughter was watching it, but I said, I'm sorry, I don't agree. Because you're creating an environment of competition where it's not needed. What does a room representative does at 4th grade? Represent what to do what? Nothing. So it's nonsense. That's the masculine in us. Too much. We need more of the feminine. And the feminine is the one that really accommodates. And that's what we need in the world. That's what Jesus brought to us, the balance, the perfect balance of masculine and feminine. When Saul of Tarsus got engaged with Abigail, in the immortal dialogues in this book, we're going to see how his over masculine energy is being balanced by her feminine. And yet, they don't succeed because, to our surprise, he ends up killing the very brother of his fiancée, which is shocking. He didn't know of it. She didn't know of it. Nobody knew. When they get to know, it's too late. And yet, her feminine is so in place that she surrenders. She is not upset with him. She understands. And Jeziel also understands. Brother and sister in perfect balance. They give us lessons of how we should be in the most critical times. This feminine and masculine in us. We are not going to survive this anxiety storm that we're living in the current times. The era of depression without boosting the feminine. A lot about depression, a lot about anxiety comes from the too much masculine in us. Too much the need of control. Too much the need of competition. Too much the need of all these things that are important if they're balanced. Look at Judas. He failed. Why? He didn't want to feel. He thought in his illusion that he was better than the master. And we are trying to do the same. Because we have all these books, and there are people who come to us and say, I remember this. Somebody who got to know of Spiritism and said, Vanessa, we need to change the name Spiritism. Oh, really? Right, Bridget?
Visionary.
Yeah, visionary. And I said, why? Because it's already, people don't understand this. It's already prejudiced. So what's the name you're going to give? If you think all these people don't know what they are doing, then how come you know? Years later, this person who was a renowned American pediatric doctor is in jail. Why? Because he tried to waterboard his daughter. So those crazy ideas don't come from healthy minds. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to surrender. That's the feminine. We don't need to plan anything because the planner is Jesus. He's the governor of the earth. It's easy for us. We're soldiers. We just go, come, do our things, fulfill it. That's it. The plans always come from on high. And all we need to do is to fulfill the designs, do the tasks, as humbly as Chico Xavier did it. When he psychographed this book, he was in a room. There was, Carlos, can you tell us pretty much the size of the room? You're better in space. Like, you remember the room in the where he psychographed this book at the for the model farm. It's like tiny, right? Or a quarter. Yeah. So small. Like in the basement. And he psychographed all this book there in the simplicity of that room without anybody else but the good spirits in him. And thanks to his humble effort, we are here today. And this is giving fire, life to us. So it's a combination of his determination, the masculine, his discipline, and the feminine surrender. Chico Xavier was in very good balance in that regard. And we see that feminine even at Abigail's deathbed. When she's spitting blood, Saul of Tarsus finally comes back to her arms. And she says, don't worry, we'll be married in another plane. She's not like, oh, why now? Why didn't you come before? Why? Look at us now. We can never be together. She surrenders. She's accepting. Tara Brach, who is a wonderful Buddhist psychologist in Washington, D.C., she has this wonderful book, Radical Acceptance. And she teaches us, based on her experience, that we're going to be better, mentally speaking, mental health-wise, if we surrender, if we accept without restrictions radically, like she does. We accept. If God loves us and something happens, well, God already knows. If he allowed it, it must have a good direction for us. It must be good. And it doesn't stop there. Because you think, oh, Abigail is gone. No, she's not gone. She continues assisting and being instrument of the highest forces after death with her brother Jeziel, helping the beloved now Paul of Tarsus when she's counseling. Be patient, give, love. The world doesn't understand it yet. Who cares? Because people depend now on us for them to learn it. People may look at us and say, why you're doing this? I remember in college, teaching kids about Spiritism at risk kids. And I would invite some of my classmates to come along and help. And they said, Vanessa, but why do you do this? Do you do this to feel good? Never thought about this. Okay, let me think. I was used to seeing my family doing it. It became second nature. I never thought about it. Why not, right? So I said, I feel good about it, but I don't think that's the reason why I do it. I do it because it's right. How many through Facebook? I know we don't want to be in social media, but we have to. We are at a time that we need to learn how to be there. There are purposes. We need to connect with people and make amends sometimes. So I remember how many colleagues of mine whom I haven't seen for ages, they come and say, oh, now I get you. See, what if I have given up? Because they didn't understand. It's vanity when I expect people's approval to do the right. It's vanity. So I respect them, but I keep doing what is right because what is right is right. But what if I don't do it? I'll be responsible, co-responsible for not doing my share. And those were people who were depending on me somewhat. And now that's how we merge into this beautiful, wonderful balance of masculine and feminine that is portrayed in Stephen. Jesus said, blessed are the meek and the peacemakers. But people don't want to be meek because it's not beautiful. They think that to be meek is to allow people to do whatever they like with you. That's not what it is. To be meek, to be mild, to be tempered. Even Ben Franklin talks about the importance of moderation, of temperance, in his 13 virtues. We have that program and lesson plans we can share for the kids. They're ready. And children learning, right? The virtues. How often they recall the lessons and say, I need to moderate. Halloween comes, 10,000 candy. And Ben Franklin said moderation. So instead of 10, let me eat just 1 or 2. And then another day,
And then it's expired.
and then it expired.
There was a nerds rope that I got for Halloween last year. I had it until April this year, and I was gonna eat it, and then I was eating it. It was in my mouth, and I was expired, so I spit it out.
Yes.
And I had just a nibble. I only eaten the nibble, and there's only like all that nerds rope left.
Oh my gosh, that's a disaster. But you know the beauty of it, Virginia? You had it right there at your hand. Nobody told you not to. And you decided not to eat. It expired because you were moderated. So good job. It's a good experience. You chose it, right? So a model of meekness. He is the one who sees the Father doing everything he is not supposed to do, and yet he surrenders. He understands. Every time he's repeating that the presence of God is allowing this to happen for purposes that are higher than he can understand. When he is there, seeing his Father being beaten to death, and he himself is experiencing the hardships of the whole situation. He understands that God must have a higher plan. He repeats that all along. When he becomes a slave, he survived that beating. He's sent out to slavery. Why? What did he do? Nothing in that life. Because you and I know that reincarnation exists. If I didn't do anything in this life, in a previous life, I did. So he looks at his companions who are rebellious, they are outraged, and he says, remember, God is expecting something from us. He's so right. So right that suddenly a patrician comes to the ship and got sick, and he asked the captain, please send me the meekest of your slaves. Him. He comes. He doesn't know he's a medium yet. He doesn't know of the Christ yet. He only knows of the Messiah in the scripture. But he gives his all. He doesn't think, I'm going to do this, thinking of maybe escaping, being freed. He doesn't. He gives his all. And who knew? The man heals, he gets sick. They want to throw him out of the ship. And the man said, no, he saved my life. Stop in the next harbor. Let him go. Gave him the money. Friends, who would ever imagine that he would leave where he left and would end up at the house of the way, Peter's home, the disciples' home? Is he right that God has a plan? Of course. He comes and gets to know that the Messiah has come. And he's not like, how come I missed it? You see, he's never upset with anything. He's always like, okay, so this is it. Okay, can I join in? He joins in. And he's not thinking, he's thinking of his sister, but he doesn't make it a quest. You see how he's open to the universal family? Because maybe we would say, I need to find my sister. No, I can't stay here. Thank you very much. The Christ is the best. But Christ, can you please find my sister? And he would go another way. He wouldn't be Stephen. Because till now he's a Jeziel. And then when he accepts it all, he says, now, in the name of the very patrician who saved my life, I'll change my name. So nobody knows that he saved me. And he gets this new name, Stephen. He's faithful, loyal, sincere, calm, and detached. Because he's not like, oh, my only sister in the world, my only family member. I see people nowadays who are like immigrants, and they're like, oh, but my mother, well, your mother, but you have the whole humanity as well to care for, not only that person, not only your children, not only your husband, not only your brother and sister. We have everybody. We need to take care of them and the universal family. Why would our family be more important than anybody else? That's selfishness. Brutal selfishness. He begins a new life, reads the scriptures, and very humbly, he marches into this journey of becoming the Stephen we know. His speech became powerful. He started healing people. Not like many of us who want to sit at mediumistic meeting and be the medium, be the healer. No. He didn't intend on it. It just happens because mediumship happens. You don't need to make an effort. You don't need to plan on it. Like Chico Xavier, Divaldo Franco, Stephen, Paul. We just go with the flow. We know it's inside of us. Of course, he met the people, Saul of Tarsus and friends, who didn't agree. He was brutally murdered, and yet the climax of his meekness is a deathbed. He forgives, he understands. This morning, listening to a beautiful podcast, they say tolerance is when you give understanding. He was so tolerant, so generous, indulgent, that he looked at Saul of Tarsus, who commanded his murder, and yet he could see the brightest side of Saul of Tarsus, saying to his sister, don't worry, he will become a great follower of the Christ the day he understands. He was right. We need to practice all these virtues in good times, so when difficult times come, we're like Stephen and Abigail, easygoing. But what do we usually do? In tricky times, we are in despair. In good times, we're distracted. Double D, distraction and despair. We need to be attentive. The times are good, that's when we do the good. We study more of these books. We practice the good because difficult times will come. And we need to have the barn of our conscience full of good deeds to sustain ourselves in difficult times. Because rest assured, the pandemic is over. Over, right? Not quite. It's not quite over. Right? Yes, Virginia. It's still going on in some form. But this is not it. It's not the worst. Things will happen. Are we ready? What are we going to do? And that's when Paul of Tarsus comes to us so we can wrap up the main characters of this book as models for us. Jesus is our main model, but he sent several people, not only Abigail, Stephen, Paul, but the wonderful Thich Nhat Hanh, who discarnated recently, the Dalai Lama, Buddha, and all the other leaders as well. When we read the book On the Way to the Light by Emmanuel, through Chico Xavier, we understand more that they are from the same group. There is no anything discordant. Everything converges. And Paul of Tarsus, who was not tolerant, who was not, his masculine was sick. His feminine was weak. He had to go through the experience of the road of Damascus. And now we're going to wrap up with a few slides to talk about our torments. Because Saul of Tarsus was a tormented man. How many people are like this? You go to work. Just be easygoing. But you look at the boss, you're not happy with the boss. Because the boss is a certain way. You look at the colleague, not happy with the colleague either. You look at a family member, not happy with the family member. We're tormented. His torment was such that he would find somebody to persecute. Somebody to prove that he's better than the person, that he is the best. Just like many people nowadays, right? And then we get people going to the moon just to prove that they can do it. And then the other billionaire does the same to prove that they are good enough. And while people are hungry and starving and having problems during a pandemic, they're going to the moon. But we're not different. Maybe we're not billionaires, but we're also going to the moon. During the pandemic, we're indulging. We're caring for ourselves, thinking about vacations, thinking about how much we deserve things that we don't, going to our particular moon that nobody sees. But we're just alike, tormented people, creating addictions that we don't need, and associating ourselves with legions of other minds that may lead us into obsessions that, as the manual says, may last for centuries. His torment was such that on the day before his arrival, and nearly at the end of the difficult and arduous journey to Damascus, the young man from Tarsus felt that the bitter memories constantly assaulting him had grown stronger. Secret powers were forcing him into profound self-examination. He recalled the early dreams of his youth. His soul was facing serious doubts. He is leaving the torment to enter what we call conflict, an existential conflict. Sometimes people wait till they turn 50 to enter the existential conflict. But we don't need to. We think only teenagers go through existential conflicts. But it's actually a next stop after experiencing great torment. So let's go deeper into what torments are, because we don't want to be tormented people any longer. Saul was a tormented person. Why? Because he inside was not aligned with the divine laws. He wanted to be the best. I mean, if we know God, who is the best? Nobody, because only God is the best. And God is not a who. So why do I want to be the best? I only have this drive when I am transgressing the divine law. I don't want to compete. I want to collaborate. I don't want to feel insulted by a boss who comes and says, Vanessa, I need a report today. And I feel insulted. Like, how come? He shouldn't talk to me this way. Well, I'm not aligned. I'm not humble. And when I transgress the divine laws and lack virtues, I will experience torments. Because virtues are strengthening to the soul. And instead, I accumulate vices. And vices are a derivation of our laziness, of our idleness. The people who watch porn do this because they are lazy. They are doing nothing. Because if they were being useful, they wouldn't have time to sit down and watch porn anyway. And it's a vice. It's an addiction. That leads to obsession. Because we're never alone. When people get used to talking bad about people, gossip, slander, in all of Emmanuel's romances, like the novels, he talks about this terrible addiction, slander, that talking bad about people will lead us to madness, mental illness. Look at Fulvia in the book 2,000 years ago. Those are vices that are led by our laziness. Because if we are working, if we're useful, we have no time to cherish vices. So torments are created because we are not being useful. Saul of Tarsus was tormented because he had too much time, power in his hands, very little to do with it. With his too much freedom and little usefulness, he became useless and tormented. But he had a childhood that taught him otherwise, and that became his saving grace. In the first 3 chapters of this book, it teaches us the power of spiritual education in childhood. No, they cannot choose when they are older, because then they will not know what to choose. As much as they need to go to school, they need to go to their spiritual religious places to learn it. That's the least we can do. The least. All parents who missed it, they regret, and regret. And if they don't regret yet, one day they will. Because it's the least we can do for our children. Saul of Tarsus, was given a good foundation with God, and that became his saving grace. he could turn this scenario of torments around and step into the next phase. How do we get out of our torments? Inevitably, we get into a conflict. How? By facing the truth. It's as if everything is dark, and that's why Jesus said the light comes and then generates a conflict. And now we're like, what should I do? That's what happened to Paul of Tarsus. The memory of Stephen and Abigail stood out the most, as if urging him to question himself even further. Why had those two siblings from Corinth acquired such prominence amid all the problems of his inner self? Why had he waited for Abigail along all the paths of his youth for the ideal of a pure life? When he faced the truth in the road of Damascus, comes. Jesus doesn't invade. Saul of Tarsus was mentally talking with Jesus, saying, how come? How come? And Jesus comes and says, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? Did you forget the plan? Don't resist. Do not kick against the goats. Get up. This is Jesus. He's never going to say, bad boy, bad boy, bad boy. So guilt is to no use. Remorse, what's in the past is in the past. Let it go, like Frozen says, right? Let it go, let it go. We love that because it teaches us, let it go. The past is in the past, really. And he says, get up. Jesus doesn't want us crying around and saying, bad person, I was a bad person. No. If you're a bad person, then stand up and walk as a good person. No, come on. You know better now. To finalize. As we march towards the pathway of the truth, leaving the zone of our conflict, we ask ourselves, how do I then transform ourselves? How do I get out? I need the knowledge of the divine laws. That's why we need to come and study Spiritism. Because if we don't know, we are not going to change. And Spiritism is the light of discernment, boosting our reasoning. As we wrap up, to prepare for the second part, which is the journey of Spiritists who are awake, who are already up and ready. We can't forget about the paraphrasing of the parable of the talents. In Chico Xavier's traveling for the first time in the United States in 1965, he came to these lands of Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, California, New York, Florida. He came, and the book that resulted from it is Among Brothers of Other Lands, and this is from the book. It's already in English. It says that in the spiritual realm, a group of illuminated spirits got together to prepare the grounds for us to be here today. So we're not here by mistake. We're following a plan that is higher than us. Then a Jewish illuminated spirit who is joining Emmanuel, André Luiz, Humberto de Campos, joins in and says, can I paraphrase the parable of talents? And he says, the first one was given 5 talents, as in the story. Same thing. Money, this, that, and the other. The second one was given 2 things. Authority, knowledge. And the third was given 1 talent. What was it? Spiritist knowledge. The good spirit said, go, reincarnate. Do the best with it. They discarnate, come back. Come back, and when they come back, The first one says, I'm sorry. Says to God, Lord of life, I'm so sorry. I didn't do too well. You know, I multiplied these 5 things in other 5 things because I created these hospitals and open cities, etc. But I didn't do in the best possible way. The Lord of life said, faithful servant. So we're looking at billionaires think they're doing bad. You don't want to think about the spiritists. Said, well, look at this. Go back. Reincarnate with these talents again. I think they're going to reincarnate in Africa. No, they're going to reincarnate rich again. Famous. And you're going to reincarnate amongst your loved ones. And continue your work. The second one comes and says, oh, dear Lord, I'm so sorry. I was a little arrogant because I knew more than people. I had my authority, so I was more demanding. But at least I opened schools and did, but I apologize. And the Lord of life says, to our surprise, good, faithful servant, reincarnate. Here, go. Back again with these talents. Finish what you started and reincarnate amongst your loved ones. And here comes the third one, the Spiritist. This is the description. He comes, he doesn't humble himself. He says, here it is, back to you. He doesn't apologize and asks, how come? You gave all this to them and you only gave me Spiritism? What is this? And the Lord of life is furious and says, you unfaithful servant, you don't know what you're talking about. The dialogue goes on and says, you're going to reincarnate without Spiritism now. So imagine us reincarnating in China, with all the respect, where Christianity is barely existent. Can you imagine? Is it going to be hard? Super hard. So then this Jewish spirit comes and says, Spiritism is the light of discernment. And he quotes the Lord of life saying, if you Spiritist had done your share, you would shed light onto those people's lives and they would have accomplished much more. So if nowadays the billionaires of the world are not doing their share, maybe we have part in it. And we think we have nothing, but we have the talent, the discernment to really shift it all and to really lead us into what we say here. I'll go through straight to Jesus here. He who is the light, the truth, the life, the way for us, inviting us to a new beginning, to the renaissance of the Spiritist Society of Richmond. Right? What an honor for us to be here. Thank you, friends.
Here we are in our second part. Just as we learn about the main characters of the book, their characteristics, some of their shortcomings, right? We all are trying to balance our own feminine and masculine within us. We will go now into how to apply all of that to our daily lives. How can we make sure that we don't incur the same errors as they had? So the next part would be about teamworking. And the title is Teamworking, the Only Path to Evolution. Friends, can we do this alone? As we see in this whole book, all of the books of André Luiz and the books of Emmanuel, even the same work of Chico Xavier, Divaldo, Vanessa, Carlos, and us. We need one another. Paul was prepared. He had his team. The team was prepared. And so are we. So it's up to us to take this opportunity to do the inner work, to do the inner transformation that only comes with being in relationship with one another, even when it's hard, because relationship can be difficult, right? It can be difficult to be around one another sometimes, but that's part of the journey of learning patience and indulgence towards one another. Even Jesus had a team. He had a team. When we read the book On the Way to the Light, Emmanuel says he had a team of superior spirits that got together to create the earth over 4.5 billion years ago. And he's lovingly caring for the earth and now us here today. So he still has a team, and you are a part of the team. Because we are, wherever we are in the universe, God has a plan for us. This is Emmanuel in the book, Homo Sat, Right Path. As we saw in the preface, Emmanuel reminded us that Paul had his divine ministry. So do we. We are personally called to follow Christ in whichever way, in your home, in your workplaces, and I'll say our, because I include myself. But are we willing to be a team? And how much of a team player I am? How do I see people around me? How well do I play with others? Do I know not only my own abilities and shortcomings, but I'm able to see their abilities and potentialities? Because remember, the seed of divinity is inside of you. So when we are team players, we learn to see the good in everyone. In the preface, we learned that another purpose of the book was to acknowledge that the apostle could not have achieved his potential in this world by himself. So when we think about the beautiful characteristics of Abigail, paired with him, paired with the masculine, the strong masculine in Paul, they work together. The plan was for them to work together as a team. Things happen in a different way. But it's really to recognize the divine inside of us, the divine inside of everyone. And as Vanessa was saying, we have our torments. And when we are tormented, we tend to see the negative inside of us and the negative of others, what's lacking. I go to a place and what's missing? What do I have in my Spiritist center yet? Instead of what do I have in me that I can bring to the center so that not only I can benefit, but service helps us. And all the hundreds of spirits who are connected to us, who are here right now, with the grace of God, receiving the healing treatment that you and I are receiving. And Paul had his team, and his preparation started at home. Here is a scene where he's talking to Abigail and his sister. He was prepared. He studied in the best places of the time in Tarsus with all the great masters. He was an athlete as an adult, as a young person. Otherwise, he would not be able to walk and endure all the journeys he did. He was a team player in his daily life. He had his role in the synagogue or the temple, and he was able to use his intellect to follow the law of Moses at the time as he did. Yet Jesus chose him as this vessel to bring the good news to you and I. Without his work, from the childhood, from his mother and his father who provided everything that he had, all the way to today. So when we think about teamwork, we think about the relationships that we have in our lives, including the one we're having today here. And later, when he's in his Paul phase, he has his team. Here you see him going around from community to community to community. He's never alone. Very few moments he's truly alone, like when he was writing his letter to the Hebrews. But most of the time he has a team. And they go and they heal, they help. That's when he learns to go from the intellect, the mind, to the feeling. Because he was a great orator, but whom he came a time on his ministry that he couldn't speak. Can you imagine? He went to a professor in Harvard. It's kind of like that, Oxford. And they're like, blah, 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 blah. It don't make sense. That's what happened to him. And Barnabas said, no, go here. And then he sat on the back of the end of the way, the church. He talked to people while he was doing his stance because he worked to support himself. So there is a whole host of people who are around him, providing him with the opportunity. Because when we serve, we're helping others and we're helping ourselves. When we also recognize we can't do everything alone, then when we allow other people to do things with us and for a cause, I'm giving them the blessing of being of service. Because sometimes the perfectionist in us, it's easy to do on yourself. It's easy. You go and do, and you don't have to tell anything to anybody, you don't have to convince anybody, you don't have to wait for anything, you just do. But then we're missing the opportunity to give them the opportunity to serve. So we can leave our own selves and our own minds to serve others. Because the service and the resources he need here, he helped. At some point in the book, he says, now I understand why the master went for the humble. Because when he was in the great places on the earth, like Athens, nobody cared about him. He was a beautiful orator, but nobody wanted to know about Jesus and be meek, be kind. But the people who were suffering, left at the margins, were the ones who accepted him. And he was there healing. So when we think about teamwork, the donation, they donated places. He never owned anything. He worked. People had to give him a place to sleep. Many times he slept homeless. He was homeless many times. He slept from place to place. People donated resources. So a patrician bought him a place where he started church. People, because we think about Spiritist centers, we're used to seeing the beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing about the pandemic. Everybody has a YouTube channel, Facebook. We can go and watch what they're doing. And we have to be careful not to measure. But also, do we need the biggest, the loudest, the beautiful? And we'll watch a Christian worship song and be happy that way, right? But that time, the communities were 2-3 people in Paul. And then he didn't stay long. The circumstances were so that instead of a program, as we showed, do message, prayer, talk, passes, and food, it was like message, prayer, talk, and lashes. It was always someone was stoning him, lashing him, imprisoning him. And then he was forced to go somewhere else and plant the seed somewhere else. That's pretty much what happened here, right? I'll share a little bit. When I was in Baltimore in 2010, I met Vanessa and Carlos in the group. I started there because I did not grow up as a Spiritist. I did not have the blessings of knowing what I know now. And that's when the torment and the forgiveness has to come, because as a young person, I did things that I wish I had done differently. If I had known, that's how we work so hard to provide this for the ones that are coming after us. That seed was planted in 2010 when I was there. And today we can realize a little bit of what's to come, the works we can do together. So that's teamwork. If they weren't doing it there, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have known. I knew about spiritualism, but it's not the same. It's not the same. And the heart is always full of gratitude for that opportunity. Now, there were struggles. Manuel says, encounter persistent struggles, joys, and sufferings, and the anguish and bitterness of the world everywhere he went. But these did not diminish his hopes in Jesus' promises. Because when we are together, as I said, it's easier to do alone because I have an idea of how I want things done. You guys have an idea of what to do. Then we have to come together. We have to say, can you do it this way? But then we have differences of opinions. You know, I want to do it one way, you want to do the other way. And then we clash. And that's when we can learn the tolerance, the indulgence, the patience with one another. The difference of opinions, look around. We're all different, and that's what the beauty of being a human, being in the universe is. As the web is showing us the billions of galaxies we never dreamed existed in this universe. If you look around in nature, there's not one tree and one bird, one mammal. There's multiple ways of doing the same thing. The important part is the journey together and the purpose of us doing the good and spreading the good news, even when it's hard, even when our family members don't want, even when it's easy to stay home. When we did the gospel at home last week, we did gospel according to Spiritism last Tuesday. It was freezing outside. We still drove here, like there were accidents on the way, but we still made it. Wouldn't it be easier to stay at home with the fireplace? Yes. But then the spirits that are counting on you and I to be here, they have to work double when we don't show up. Of course, they have a plan. They have a backup plan. If I'm not here, then they can put someone else in my way. That's not going to stop the work from progressing, but it will delay it a little bit. He was misunderstood. He was persecuted. He was stoned. These days, nobody's going to enter here and stone us. But they will send darts on the internet. They will think bad. They will be resentful that they're not doing the work we're doing. They wish they were. You know very well that. Then we have to be strong to understand, continue to do it. Because there's so many distractions these days for us to say, let's take care of our family, our self-care, do things that are enjoyable, but it won't bring us any fruitful work. Because there's always, Paul says, I've always had the conviction that God is in urgent need of a job well done, and the work is immense. The amount of goodness in the universe is indescribable. The same way that we can describe what it would be to meet Jesus, and Emmanuel described indescribable figure, indescribable sweetness, light, indulgence. The work is so great. And the legions of good spirits that come, they're here all the time, just waiting for us to open our minds. Mostly our hearts, because our minds are pretty open to things and we can learn. But open the heart and say, yes, I will give up this so that I can have the blessings of Spiritism. Because who knows? Today I'm here. Today you're here. I'm not wishing, but newsflash, we will discarnate. Tomorrow, I may be the one. I won't use our here because I don't want to wish anybody. But if I discarnate today, I might be the one counting on you, mostly on them, to rescue me. You saw Frederick Figner, Brother Jacob in the book. I came back. He was thinking he was the person. He brought in all the stuff. He was a Spiritist Federation in Brazil, and he saw the people with their light, and he didn't have his light. And he came back and showed to us that just doing the work is not enough. We have to feel, as Jesus says, you have to feel the teachings. And the teamwork in that time and today goes from Jesus. It went from Jesus to Stephen. And Abigail, it hasn't been put here, but she was there too. Paul and his team, the only time he wrote alone was a letter to the Hebrews. So most of the time he was talking and they were scribing. And then someone had to carry the letter, not fly the letter, FedEx the letter, UPS, no. They had to put it in their possession, pray that nothing happened, walk, take a camel, take some other chariot ride, a ship. He didn't go on sail at times. And pray that nobody stole the writings on the way, because it wasn't like, here, I have these, I have the book on my phone, we're monitoring this stuff, we have books there for sale. They had to prepare with the tree, with the skin of the animal. Nobody someone who could write beautifully and copy. It was a lot of work, and they did it. And throughout this time, and this is just for our education, you can go to the Yale Divinity School and take a whole course on the New Testament. And you can see all the places he went, all his journeys, all of the places that he had to walk or sail to. All along the way, surrendering, because when Christ came to him on the road of Damascus, Christ didn't say, okay, here is your to-do list for the next 3 decades. You're going to do this, and you're going to 40 lashes here, 39 lashes here, stoning there. Some people are going to put you in jail here. No, he said, go there. Of course, he was blind. I will tell you there what you need to do. And every time it was like this. He learned that the plan was Christ's, not just his. Nowadays, we can be blessed with vehicles so that brothers, guests here and ourselves. So there's so much more. It's all teamwork as well. And later, as he got older, you see him here depicted as a much older man, where he is teaching and reading the scrolls. People admire him. But not just because of the beautiful words he was able to say, because he was able to translate and see Jesus, the Messiah, promised on the law of Moses. And he was able, through the process of talking to each and every person, one person at a time, relationship, teamwork is relationship. Then later, just like today, you and I admire Chico Xavier, and we are blessed. And we thank him and Emmanuel for all the work he did. Not just because of the beautiful words he did, but for the figure that they were, for the joy they radiated, for the works. He had the testimony in him, the lashes, the scars, the suffering. He was also determined, and he was humble to understand, I'm not here just for, as Vanessa said, to pay my bills, do my tents, eat a little bit, then repeat. And later we'll see when he is cowardly murdered. You can see the legion of spirits behind him on your left side. Jesus himself comes to receive him. And Jesus' right side, Jezeel. Jesus' left side, Abigail, the heart, right, the left side. And you see through, when he discarnated the first, he was blind again. He had to trust. And then he hears Ananias in the spiritual realm who comes to restore his sight. And then the first thing he wants to do is go to Jerusalem. And in the way, he travels and visits in spirit, because remember, he's discarnated. And every time he stops, Emmanuel describes spirits join them. It's a caravan. And just like you and I, we have spirits who love us, incarnated with us. And we have spirits who love us, who guide us, just waiting for that opening. They would love to see us open our potentialities for loving one another even more than we have. And then through this teamwork, we can materialize how healing it is to have the good news with us. The good news that we have from Jesus. The happiness we'll feel one day when we get to be the superior spirit. And when we talk about healing, the power of the good news, we go back to Stephen. Because Stephen was a slave at this time, due to the circumstances not that he didn't do in this life. It was his father who got them in that situation. Yet, he selflessly served. He's here taking care of the patrician who got ill. He could have been bitter, but what did I do to be here and be sour and join the other slaves in complaining? He said, no, the God has a plan. It's a way. So he selflessly cared for the wounds, which were infectious, and ended up getting ill. The question is then, how am I using my caring for others as a means to heal them? Not just healing the physical body, because maybe we will and maybe we won't. It's not up to us, it's up to God. but truly healing our souls from the things we've done, forgiving others for the things they've done to us, and sometimes they don't even know. So how can we be an agent of love? That is the glue that keeps the universe together, as Leon Denis says, to help others and heal them in our lives. It can be our attitude towards one another, how we treat one another. When we're doing the passes, how I present, how I prepare. In mediumship, the mediumship is about relationship. We shouldn't be doing mediumship meetings alone at home. We depend on others. The spirits depend on us to donate the spiritual fluid so that we can help the spirits and help ourselves too. When we do this kind of work, and I hear sometimes too much work, it's a lot of preparation, yes. But then when you finish at 10:30 at night, you can't sleep because you're so full of energy. Because you're like, you know the spirits are there with you. The message I read this morning, it was written because the spirits were there with me. So you have to be open, even if it is what happens. You write on a sticky note, and then you put it together later, because it's just, the inspiration needs to come. And the inspiration may be looking around for someone who needs anything, from the trash on the street to the smile of the cashier, to pray for people who are on the roads, for those who gave everything, the physical that we have. And it starts, of course, at home. And then here he is, Jeziel, but he will shortly change his name to Stephen to protect after he's left the port. For just because of the plan of the Christ, he was received at the mention of the way. At this time, he only knows the law of Moses, but he believes the Messiah will come to help the Jewish people after so long of suffering. He knows there's a plan. He was spared that fatal outcome on the boat because he was a liability. He wasn't worth much as a slave. It was labor. Then he got ill, and he probably, if he hadn't helped the patrician the way he did, we would have no just Stephen or Paul in the form that we do. Maybe someone else would have come along the way. There he met the master disciples and learned of the good news. He starts studying Levi's notes. He talks, imagine if we could go back and watch the scenes such as Humberto de Campos did. And we can, because we can read the book Good News and we'll have the behind the scenes. Be able to talk to Simon Peter and hear firsthand. Because we only have a small sliver of what happened. Because Christ was also healing. Everywhere he went, he was serving. He's serving now, everywhere he goes. So when he learns about the good news, that's the solid foundation. He builds on the solid foundation he had at home, because healing can start at home. When we reincarnate, those folks who come with us help us in our healing of the spiritual wounds that we've had for so many reincarnations. Imagine, friends, here he was just, of course, he had to be healed because he was ill. He starts to feel better and starts to study. And as Vanessa says, he surrenders because imagine his dad was killed. He was a slave. He got ill. He didn't know where his sister was. Can you imagine not knowing the fate of your loved one? Any loved one, we have many missing persons on the earth today. Can you imagine their suffering? Yet he's like, God has a plan. That doesn't mean he wasn't suffering, but it meant he didn't stop there to lament. Otherwise, we wouldn't have what we have today. And he became an instrument of Jesus, which later Jesus will bring him to be the conduit so that Paul can receive the words of Jesus. So when we read the letters of Paul, you are reading what came from Jesus' mind. Therefore, it's the laws of God, because God speaks through Jesus. Metaphorically, because God doesn't have a mouth. You know what I mean? So the preciousness of this book, and what we should do is get to know the first revelation. Get to know there are Messianic Jews in the world. Jews that believe that Jesus is the Messiah, Messianic Jews. They can make the connections between the old and the new. They don't know of Spiritism, but they know how to connect old and the new. We already have them. So we need to study that so that we can build and understand some of the things that Kardec's trying to explain to us. But healing starts with selflessness. So you can be an instrument of healing when we know that I need to give what I have to others, my time, my resources. Maybe I sleep a little bit less and translate one more message. Maybe I sleep a little bit earlier because I'm praying for those who just discarnated. On the things you see on the news. Chico Xavier did that. Val does that. When we see someone commit something out of madness. I'm like, how come? Someone was suffering so much they went and did this to other people. They're suffering, they're ill. And at night, we can be selfless and say, well, instead of indulging myself in sleep with my companions, then I can say, mentors, please take me. Give me the treatment. Help me have my counseling session with my family. Come back here at night, please, and help us with the spirits that are here too. There's so much work to do, but it starts with the acknowledgement that we are giving all of ourselves, we're being selfless. And after selfless comes humility, because no healing, nothing that we do, including being here today, having a heart beating, comes without God's will. Everything. You look around, I didn't create any of these. We put together, we molded, we're co-creators, right? So we put it together. Healing comes from God. In the book Genesis, you can read about divine providence, spiritual fluids, the healings of Jesus, the mechanistic part of it, but ultimately comes with an open mind. When I'm giving the passes, distributing the water, helping clean, all of that can be of service to others. Also, when you're receiving something from someone, open your hearts to receive the love that can come from them. Because I can stand here and do passes 12 hours straight to you, but if you're not open to receive the healing, nothing will happen. Some are more open, some are not. And sometimes it's homeopathic though, sometimes it takes time. We need to open ourselves to know of these and truly feel that it's time for us to apply it. We serve and we leave the healing up to God because we don't determine what happened to people. Because otherwise you are co-responsible for their choices. They ask us, we give. But when we give, we say, please God, make me an instrument right now. May I be your chosen vessel so they can receive the help that they need, that you think is good for them. Then humility from both Paul, who was here after seeing the master at the road to Damascus. He was blind. He knew intellectually a lot of things, but the master said, you have to go through your inner journey, the 3 days of darkness. And he trusted. And Ananias comes and heals him. Now look at the humility of Ananias, because Paul here, he knew Paul was coming to come after him. He had the papers to arrest him. Jesus comes and says, Ananias, go heal Saul at this time. Imagine how humble he had to be, like, okay, I guess this guy who wants to persecute me, I'll go help him. He had to trust. He had to be humble and selfless to go and heal. Would we do the same? Would we say, oh, go there and help that person that you don't like? I'm like, I have a lot to do with Jesus. Another time, another day. But he was humble. At the same time, Paul and his team was performing the healings wherever they went. Simple places, humble places, the needy and the disabled. And the question we have is, are we doing the same ourselves when I go anywhere? When I leave now and drive and I go to the grocery store, I stop here, I stop there, someone calls me, I share good news on Facebook. That's your opportunity. You're being called right there to choose to align the actions with the divine laws, therefore be aligned with the good. Later, about a decade later, Paul encounters the proconsul here. The proconsul is ill. And he has by his side a healer, or called a healer, oracle called Bar Jesus. You know, those who have some talent, but then they also profit from the talent, just as if we were charging for their mediumship. So you know the alignment that they have. And then Paul comes, is asked to come. And the physician is a beautiful story, because the proconsul is asking, I hear that you're healing people. Can you help me out a little bit? Tell me about it. What are you doing? So Paul takes that opportunity as a great communicator that he was. He spoke multiple languages, very well versed. He was able to adapt his message to everyone, depending from the highest, he's going to talk to the highest, and to the humblest, in this case, the ones who don't have the power. He tells the proconsuls that there's a physician, yes, a physician of souls, someone who knows you intimately, and forgive me maybe for paraphrasing you, someone that can heal, that knows you even before you know you need him. And that's what we are here to realize, that the physician of our souls accepted us lovingly into the earth, allowing us to be together so that we can heal one another through the difficulties. As Vanessa says, let's forgive, let's be humble, let's let our differences to the past. Today we are different people than we were 10 years ago. And Bar Jesus, of course, is watching all of this, is not happy, because it's taking away his livelihood. You know, he was there helping, quote unquote, helping in his manner. And after a while, it takes 4 hours of Paul engaging with Bar Jesus, talking, explaining, and they're having this argument, because he didn't take it lightly. Ultimately, Bar Jesus goes blind as well, so you're unable to see the truth. And that's what the beauty of meeting people where they are. Paul was like, hey, here's the deal. I'm a Roman citizen. I speak 4 or 5 languages. I used to be a doctor of the law. You listen to me. That wasn't his approach. His approach was, Bar Jesus wanted to know, the proconsul wanted to know. They weren't happy. They were arguing. Eventually, Bar Jesus gets to be blind, and after a while, don't you worry, his vision was restored. But he needed to go through that experience. So the invitation is for you to use your life, the opportunities that you have, wherever God puts you, to use the words, the best words we can, the kindest words we can, the kindest actions. And start small and then grow. And forgive yourself if you're not able to fulfill. Some days are better than others, so we keep trying. And then later, a few days later, Bar Jesus looks for Paul and sees an opportunity, right? Says, tell me what is this divine talisman that you gotta carry something with you. There's gotta be something that I can hold, that I can use. Why aren't you charging for this? You do so good work, you're healing all these people for free. Are you crazy? People tell us that too. Why don't you charge? Why don't you charge admission? No, why do you do this for free? Because we receive everything for free. If it were for the things we did in our past, if there wasn't grace of God, we would probably be in a much worse situation. So it's always what we did multiplied by the grace of God, and that's where we are today. And Paul answers, says the divine talisman is faith in God combined with selflessness. So go ahead, friends, go out and heal. We all have the power to heal, to be this conduit of healing of the people's souls. Because remember, everybody that Paul healed, that Jesus healed, that Simon Peter healed, all the apostles, they all died. They all discarnated, in a sense. So will we. So the healing comes from within. When we do the inner journey, we work on our torments, and we work to be meek, the healing comes. So let's not leave one more life to next life, because we may not have that opportunity. We don't, like I said, tomorrow I might be here listening to you on the spiritual realm if I'm lucky. So the invitation is to use selflessness, looking for those small opportunities of service And then humility to know that whatever you do comes from God. And last but not least, holy mediumship. Mediumship with Jesus. We're all mediums, as we know from the medium's book. Some more ostensive than others, but you also have your intuition. So you are receiving at all times. The spirit mentors are there. Please do this, say this. They don't beat, they don't yell at us, they're not forceful. Jesus wasn't forceful. Even when Paul saw Jesus, he describes he came with calm, not energetic light, with a calming light, because he needed to quench a little bit the masculine in Paul, because you remember he was on the road to Damascus to kill more Christians because it was persecuted. And he was co-responsible for all the orders he did. He maybe didn't physically kill anybody, but his people working under him did, so he was co-responsible. And then in his encounter with Jesus, he hears a voice. So he could have chosen to not do it, right? It's like, no, I have too much power. But he chose during that encounter to Jesus. And then his mediumship developed then. It was a mediumship that came directly from the Master, where he was called to service. He was blind. He had to do that inner. Imagine being blind for 3 days on an inn. You don't know what people are going to do to you. You have no resources. How difficult that must have been. How tormented he must have been at the time. But he was open, as we see. When he's doing that trip, he's already open inside of himself. That also implies that when we're helping others, we respect where they are. Because what I know is just one part, one sliver of their story. They may not be open to do the same amount of work and the same kind of work that we do, but they can also do the work. And then this holy mediumship again continues with Ananias, who received, Jesus says, go there and look for Saul. The humility, the humbleness of Ananias to trust that he could do it. Remember, we have free will. The Master said, go and I'll tell you what to do because you're ready. Why you're persecuting me? That wasn't the plan. The plan was Abigail as a wife, a brother-in-law. But imagine if he had accepted that calling, then we would have a different trio. Maybe we would have Jeziel and Saul, Paul and Steve. But he accepted it. But then Ananias went and did his piece. He said, okay, Master, you're telling me to do it, I'll do it. Paul could have turned around and be like, I'm the doctor of the law, I'm going to eliminate all of you. But he was ready, he received it. The same person who was persecuting him, we are barely able to forgive our parents for things that they did, that we think they did. Or a friend, a family member, or colleagues who sent an email and we didn't ask them, and there was a comma in the wrong place, and I thought they were attacking me. So here we do have this trust and this mediumship with Jesus, when I had to trust. And know that the plan was Christ, the same way that Christ is bringing you here today, is bringing us here today. It's his plan that we're here. We are the ones putting it in place in the material realm. We need to do it. Of course, God could be like, okay, Richmond, Spiritist, but then what is the value? What is the ownership they would have? What kind of work we could say? We just, a Spiritist center peers, we walk in, what is the point for us? We have to do the work. They're waiting and counting on us. And this holy mediumship occurs throughout his time. Here's his young. This is a depiction of him sleeping in the cabin. In the cave, sorry. The cave is there. He finds a little bit of, and he goes and he sees Stephen on his dream. Just like you and I. We can do this every day. With intelligent sleep, you can meet your mentor. Maybe there will be a few more degrees between, as I showed you, teamwork, went Jesus, Stephen, Paul. Maybe there will be us, our mentors, a few more steps, and then Jesus, but it's there. The teamwork is still there, that direction. And he is transformed here. He's traveling to spread the good news. He's able to receive instructions and wait for the time. Because sometimes we receive instructions, but we are anxious. We want to do it right away. We don't wait for the right time to do things. And we can seek the guidance of our guardian angels every day in this holy mediumship. They are there 24/7, your personal trainer, free of charge. Unlike everything else that we do, there's a cost to everything in the earth. Physically, when we want to put something like this together. But they are with us, but they're waiting for us again to open the hearts, to feel their presence and to listen to them. Because with the listening, you have the discernment as well, right? Not only the mentors are by our side. And he is also able to meet with Abigail in the spiritual realm. He's receiving the famous words like love, work, wait, and forgive. The words is her verbs to him. Why are you so distraught? Work, love, work, wait, and forgive. Our loved ones are with us. Our grandparents, our parents, children we had in our lives, families we had in our lives, they may be around. They may be now our mentors as well. And we can rejoice with them, even if they don't materialize here. And I have the proof that they are there. You can feel in your heart that they are with you. And that's what the recipe for the holy mediumship. So the invitation, as I wrote here, is to use the time wisely. So when we choose to not just have a plan and have a planner checklist, but is it really what I'm doing today, what I came here to do? What is my divine ministry? Sometimes we say, oh, divine ministry, that's for Divine, who has a mention of the way or Chico. No, it's for you. They have their divine ministry that, thank God, is helping so many people. If Chico Xavier had said, I know, Emmanuel, I don't like to sleep late. I'll do some self-care and get 8 hours of sleep. With so many distractions in our lives, we wouldn't have the 400 plus books, probably 500 now, they're already published. It takes one decision at a time for us to really, the question is not even from Emmanuel or Chico or me, it's on the Spirit's book. The third part of the Spirit's book, the first chapter from the Divine Laws, tells us right away what you're doing doesn't align with the Divine Laws. It's an algorithm, it's a full mark. Yes, then you're doing the good. No, then you're not doing the good. Evil. There's no middle. There's no neutral. So every day we go and we choose wisely to do the intelligent sleep, the daily activities. Just as Saul starts his mission and later changes his name to Paul, his mission including working with others, as we saw in the teamwork, is just like ours. We are eager to work together, to spread the consolation, to serve the poor, to endure together the hardships and the difficulties. He had loss of status, he lost money, he was destitute, yet he continued. That's what the holy mediumship is about. He couldn't have said, oh no, it's just so hard. I started with all those philosophers in Tarsus. Why am I here doing with these people? And that's what the majority of the people at the time said. Why are you helping them? And that's where he went, and that's where he was most fruitful. He healed, he helped, and he guided others through his example. Because remember, he didn't stay at one church for long, one community for long. But people saw the way he was, and they're like, what are you doing? I want to do that too. I want to do that as well. And the good spirits were there with him. He guided the youth. A couple of his followers, that including the one who wrote the Gospel of Mark, were teenagers when they met Paul. The mediums of Kardec were teenagers too. So when we are doing this work, we're teaching the new generation that it's worth it. It doesn't come easy, but it can be fruitful. We can always start anew. He went and helped those who needed. He helped them even when they weren't the greatest to him. Here is a lady who is reading, who is doing, giving information. He went there, he repelled the evil spirits who accompanied this person and others. So again, the teamwork starts when we do the healing when I choose to smile at someone that doesn't have any relationship to me. When I do matter, kindness meditation, or the discipline to as well, not spiritism. When I visualize the good for others, I start with someone I don't know, and then I do a vision for the acquaintances and then for myself. So anywhere we go, the spirits are there, the good ones, and the ones who are still in need to know the good news. It may be your action, your smile, your kindness towards them that flip the switch and prevents them from being decades and centuries in the same state of mind. Because at some point, who knows, when we were in previous lives, someone came and helped us. When we're discarnated, perhaps suffering, then the mentors and the spirit came and rescued us as they did under our wings. So the holy mediumship with Jesus is one of actions, regardless if I'm going to go and heal and make people see. It's just a small act of kindness that comes from the heart. And of course, he had these moments where he was able to see the master. It was materialized to him, who would tell him, remember, Stephen is closely with you, giving you the instructions. And today, we have 8 billion incarnates on the planet, plus the spirits are with us, plus the spiritual colonies. And Christ is patiently guiding all of us. 4.5 billion years of evolution, and now 2,000 years plus after he came, he's still waiting for us to open to this holy mediumship. And that's what we wish, this connection with Jesus. Again, the connection at night. Later, he's much older here. He's also visited by Stephen and Abigail. So friends, let us all watch our thoughts, our intentions, because sometimes we think things we else intend others. We filter what we say and what we do towards the good. And then, of course, he had his prize. After all the decades of struggle, he was able to be redeemed. His one and I says to him, welcome. As a redeemed person, what do you want to do? And he went and visited. The caravan follows towards seeing the Christ. And that's what we want to have. We want to look at ourselves through our inner journey, understanding that we are still flawed, but we have many good traits that we can use, that we can go deeper. If I need help, I go to a psychologist, I go to the physician, I come to the Spiritist center, and I serve, because when we give off of ourselves, so that when we grow, we can balance the feminine and the masculine. We can be meek. And then when we have conquered our own road to Damascus, we can finally meet Christ Jesus. Because that's the law of progress. Whether we want or not, that's the destiny. The question is, how can I use all that we have today, including the healing that we're feeling, the intentions and emotions, so that I can expedite. One, the passes, when you go to the parks, you buy the passes. You want to go front of the line, you want to go front of the line. Not the shortcut necessarily, but how can I give more? This is the time of the earth where we need to think more of others than of ourselves. And of course, as we've described, we want to move into our next phase where we're going to receive the passes. Thinking about this encounter with the Master, when you're seated there, we want to visualize your mantle embracing you. Open arms. That's what Jesus said in this beautiful vision. Paul sees Jesus, Abigail, and Stephen. He has a thought. He wants to hug the fiancé. And Jesus knows until Jesus opens his arms and says, be happy, rejoice. He doesn't want us to be suffering and feel guilty. He wants us to be, that's the kingdom of God, just rejoicing with Jesus in the good spirits. Because when we serve, we improve, we heal, and then we are able to even be a greater vessel for everyone around us. So friends, I thank you for being here today. We're gonna finish our live stream so that we can go through the passes. If you would like some, then we'll rejoice, nourishing the body as much as we have nourished ourselves today.